I was speaking to a friend recently about the general difficulties that we find ourselves in this modern world. And we were specifically talking about the difficulties with the church, um, how the church is in such a messy situation at the moment, um, how much extra work we need to do to keep our minds clear and to know where the truth is and to hold on to it. Um, And I agree, it is a difficult situation. It is a difficult situation. I do always point out that we're not being fed to lions, so that's always a bonus. Um, but at the same time, we really do live in a sea of lies now. Um, and I wonder if that sea is thicker and kind of more opaque than it ever was before. I don't know. I don't know for certain. But these are certainly tricky times. Not in material ways, I'd say, but in mental and spiritual ways, definitely, definitely. Um, but at the same time, what can happen with those conversations is you can become tempted to think, I really wish things would be easier. I really want things to be easier. I know really things should be easier. One of the reasons why it's pertinent for those of us who are in the church is because there was a time when it was easier, for example, to find the proper masses or to be given proper catechism and the right teaching. And you might say, well, we should be able to have the proper catechisms. We should be able to just find a church. As a Sedevacantist, it's 2 hours to drive to Mass is a small journey. And that's true of most of the people in my congregation. Church should be a 10-minute walk down the road. And in some ways, if all things had gone how they should have done, then church would only be 10 minutes down the road. If things had gone how they should have done, firstly, we wouldn't have a problem in the first place, right? Because Eve would have never taken the apple. But in any case, things would be easier. But here's the thing. We don't deserve any of that. We should have an easier life, as if an easy life is something that is coming to us, is something that we deserve, is something which is owed to us. And in many ways, it's an obvious realization, but it's in many ways, perhaps I've come to this quite late. But something that is recurring more and more in my mind recently is the fact that we don't deserve anything. We don't even deserve the church. Now, God in His grace has given it to us, but we don't deserve it. And we certainly don't deserve a church which makes life easy for us. Now, I'm not saying it never has, or that it doesn't, but again, there's that gap between what we believe we owe and what can justly be taken away from us. One of the arguments for why we're in this current mess in the first place is because we haven't cherished what we were given. We didn't look after the gifts that God has given us. And so He took them away. He took them away. And He had every right to do so. And we have no right to demand them back. None. And that's always been true. Now, as harsh as that may all sound, I think it all goes back to this same topic, which has also been recurring of late, the topic of humility as opposed to pride. And the thing is, firstly, God created us from nothing. None of us created ourselves. And we expect so much in life because life is so full of stuff, and especially modern life, which is so full of easy comfort. It feels like it's kind of our due, in a sense, to have things come to us easily, and to simply enjoy things in comfort. But if you stop and think for a second, why would you ever assume that that's the case? Now, as a side tangent briefly, one of my favorite videos I've ever seen is a brief video, it's only about 5 minutes, of a old man who cannot see color, right? He's colorblind. And in this brief video, we see this family come together to buy this old man this pair of glasses. And it's just magnificent. He puts these glasses on, and you can tell that the world has just opened itself to him. And that something quite, for lack of a better word, magical happens. And it's almost like he's a little kid again. He goes from this really buff, kind of stoic old man to having the innocence and wonder and, dare I say, vulnerability of a child for a few brief minutes as he discovers just how beautiful color is. Now, why do I mention that? Because you and I might expect that, what do we want in life? We want food and shelter and somewhere comfortable to live. And then beyond that, we want work, but not only work, but work perhaps which is interesting. We want a local community. We're surrounded by people who love and respect us. We want wives and husbands and children and families and all of these wonderful, wonderful things. But we didn't even give ourselves the ability to see the color blue, And what inherently in us deserved that in the first place? What inherently in ourselves deserved the ability to see, let alone to think, let alone to enjoy a life full of good and wonderful things? And that's the state we're in. Like, even with how difficult things are, let's say in the church or in the absolute insanity of the modern world in which we live, how many good things are surrounding us every minute of every day, and I think it's worth reflecting on, because humility goes hand in hand with gratitude, or should we say gratitude goes hand in hand with humility. Now, I listened to, I think it was a series of sermons or a series of lectures. I can't remember who they were by. It was by one of the saints, or at least they were read out by a priest who was taking the words of one of the saints. And it was on the subject of humility. And as we will all know, as Christians, humility is like the real water of grace. I mean, grace can't enter the soul without humility. Humility really is like a foundation of the virtues. We could also argue that faith is a foundation of the virtues, which it is. So is love. So is hope. But humility, without that, our souls are poisoned, and it really does allow us to bridge the gap over our pride to, well, hopefully, God willing, a connection with our Lord. And the saints, in their humility, recognized a number of things. They recognized that they were made of dust. They recognized that of themselves they were truly nothing. And we can all think about that, right? Consider, you can look at your hand, consider the complexities in the details on just the very skin of the back of your hand, and the intricacy with which you can move your fingers and do all kinds of complex and intricate things. Now, it takes like decades worth of scientific research to understand how that even works. None of us designed ourselves before birth, did we? These are all things that were just given unto us. For what? Right? For what? Did we do anything to deserve that before we were born? Of course not. Of course not. It was a gift. And all of our faculties all of our abilities, all of our powers and competencies, every good decision we can make, if we can call it good, is all fueled by something which is not simply us. Because what are we of ourselves? What are we of ourselves? Nothing. We are simply nothing. And so what do we deserve of ourselves? And the answer is, truly, nothing. Now, a selfish mind, a prideful mind, a childish mind would take that as an occasion to complain, to rebel. Oh, I think I should deserve something. Oh, doesn't that mean that I need to be miserable because I don't really feel special anymore because it's not all about me? But what the saints never despaired of that fact. In fact, you could argue the saints were amongst the most joyous people who ever lived. But where did their joy come from? Their joy came from the recognition that they didn't deserve anything, yet they had so much anyway. Right? They deserved nothing, yet they were given, out of pure love, everything that they had. And not only that, but they were given the promises of a kind of happiness and love that would never end. Wonderful, right? And perhaps in many ways, one could argue, whether it's true or not, that humility would simply lie in the ability, the will, to accept that. Right? To accept that there's something beyond us which gives us what we are, and that it's not something which is owed, that it's a fortune that we have, that it's something that we're lucky to have, and that we should be grateful for. The prideful man is ungrateful for all he doesn't have. And very simply, the humble man is simply grateful for the little he does have. Because he always realizes that that little, however little it may be, could have been less, but it's not. You know, something is always more than nothing. Something is always more than nothing. And so we have that to be grateful for, I suppose. And so I think that's it. I don't really have anything more to say. God bless you all.